I need to tell you something that's been eating at me for weeks now. Something I can't explain. Something that makes my hands shake every time I walk past room 7. My name is Sarah, and I'm a NICU nurse at St. Catherine's Medical Center. I've worked the night shift for 6 years, and I thought I'd seen everything. Premature babies fighting for their lives, twins born at 24 weeks, mothers crying in the hallways at 2 in the morning. I thought nothing could surprise me anymore. I was wrong. It started 3 months ago on a Tuesday night. I remember because Tuesdays are usually quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you grateful and nervous at the same time. I was doing my rounds, checking monitors, adjusting 4 lines, making sure every tiny chest was rising and falling the way it should. Room 7 had 4 isolettes that night. 4 precious babies, each one fighting their own battle. There was little Mason, born at 28 weeks with underdeveloped lungs. Sweet Lily, who had a heart defect we were monitoring closely. The Rodriguez twins, Marcus and Maria, so small they could both fit in my hands together. Everything was normal until 3:33 in the morning. I was at the nurse's station, updating charts, when suddenly every alarm in room 7 went off at once. Not one after another. Simultaneously. The sound was deafening, this horrible chorus of beeping and wailing that made my heart stop. I ran. God, I ran so fast I nearly slipped on the polished floor. When I burst through that door, all 4 babies had stopped breathing. Completely. Their monitors showed flat lines where there should have been the steady rhythm of tiny heartbeats struggling to stay strong. My training kicked in immediately. I started with Mason, the most critical. But here's the thing that still gives me chills. The moment I touched him, he gasped. Just like that. A huge, shuddering breath like he'd been underwater and finally broke the surface. Then Lily. Then Marcus. Then Maria. One by one, as soon as my hands made contact, they started breathing again. All of them. Within 30 seconds, every baby in that room was breathing normally, like nothing had happened. I told myself it was a monitor malfunction. It had to be. Equipment fails all the time, right? Maybe there was an electrical surge or something interfering with the signals. I filed an incident report, and maintenance came the next day to check everything. They found nothing wrong. Not a single thing. The monitors were functioning perfectly. The electrical systems were fine. Everything checked out. But then it happened again. Exactly 1 week later. Same night. Same time. 3:33 in the morning. I was in room 4 that time, checking on a baby girl named Emma who'd just come out of surgery. I heard the alarms from down the hall, that same simultaneous screaming of machines in distress. This time there were 3 babies in room 7. Different babies. Mason had gone home. The twins were still there, but Lily had been moved to a different room for a procedure. There was a new baby, a little boy named James. I ran again, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Same thing. All 3 babies, not breathing. Monitors flat. And the second I touched them, they gasped back to life. Marcus first, because he was closest. Then Maria. Then James. Each one starting to breathe the instant my skin made contact with theirs. I was shaking so badly I had to sit down after. My colleague Jennifer found me in the break room 20 minutes later, staring at my hands like they were foreign objects attached to my body. I told her what happened. She looked at me with this mixture of concern and disbelief, like she wasn't sure if I was having a breakdown or making some kind of sick joke. She suggested I talk to someone. Maybe take a few days off. The stress of night shift can do things to your mind, she said. Make you see patterns that aren't there. But I knew what I'd seen. I knew what I'd felt. And I knew it was going to happen again. The 3rd time, I was ready. I had my phone in my pocket, set to record. I positioned myself closer to room 7 as 3:30 approached. My hands were sweating. My mouth was dry. I felt like I was waiting for a bomb to go off. At 3:32, I stood outside the door, watching through the window. There were 4 babies again. The Rodriguez twins were finally going home the next day. There was James, still fighting. And 2 new arrivals, Emma and Sophie. 3:33. The alarms erupted. I was through the door in seconds, My phone recording everything. And there they were. 4 babies, not breathing. But this time, I saw something else. Something that made my blood turn to ice. In the split second before I reached the first isolette, I saw shadows. Not normal shadows. These were thick, dark, moving independently of any light source. They were hovering over each isolette like oil slicks in the air, and they were pressing down on the babies' chests. The moment I entered the room, the shadows recoiled. They pulled back like living things, retreating to the corners of the ceiling where they dissolved into nothing. And the babies gasped. All 4 of them. Breathing again. I checked my phone later, hands trembling so badly I almost dropped it. The video showed the alarms going off. It showed me running to each isolette. It showed the babies starting to breathe. But it didn't show the shadows. There was nothing there but normal darkness in the corners of the room. Nothing that could explain what I'd seen with my own eyes. I didn't sleep that day. I couldn't. I kept seeing those shadows, the way they moved, the way they seemed almost purposeful. Like they were doing something to those babies. Something terrible. I started researching. I know how that sounds. Like I'd lost my mind, like I was spiraling into some conspiracy theory rabbit hole. But I needed answers. I searched through old hospital records, looking for any similar incidents. I found something in the archives that made my hands go numb. 15 years ago, there had been a series of unexplained infant deaths in the NICU. 7 babies over the course of 3 months. All in room 7. All at night. The hospital had investigated, brought in specialists, reviewed every procedure. They found nothing. No medical explanation. No evidence of malpractice. The deaths were ruled as SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, even though SIDS is incredibly rare in hospital settings where babies are constantly monitored. The night nurse on duty during those deaths was a woman named Margaret Foster. I found her obituary. She'd died 6 months after the last infant death. Suicide. She'd left a note, but the contents were never made public. I managed to track down her sister through social media. It took some convincing, but she finally agreed to talk to me. We met at a coffee shop on my day off. Margaret's sister, Patricia, was in her 70s, a small woman with tired eyes that had seen too much grief. She held her cup with both hands like she needed its warmth, even though it was summer and the air conditioning was barely keeping up with the heat. She told me that Margaret had become convinced something evil was in room 7. That something was taking the babies. She'd tried to tell the administration, tried to get them to understand, but everyone thought she was having a breakdown. The stress, the trauma of watching those babies die, it had broken something in her mind. That's what everyone said. She'd been put on leave, encouraged to seek psychiatric help. And then, 6 months later, she'd walked into the ocean and never came back. Patricia's hands were shaking when she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Inside was Margaret's suicide note. She'd kept it all these years, unable to throw it away but unable to look at it either. She pushed it across the table to me. I opened it with trembling fingers. Margaret's handwriting was frantic, the words pressed so hard into the paper that some letters had torn through. It said, "They come at 3:33. Always 3:33. I tried to stop them, but I wasn't enough. I wasn't strong enough. They're hungry and they feed on the breath of innocence. Room 7 is a doorway. Someone sealed it wrong. I can hear them calling me now. I'm so tired. I can't fight anymore. Tell someone. Make them believe. Don't let them take any more babies." I sat there in that coffee shop, reading those words over and over, and I felt something inside me crystallize into certainty. This wasn't in my head. This wasn't stress or exhaustion or pattern seeking in random events. This was real. Something was in room 7. Something that came at 3:33 in the morning to steal the breath from helpless babies. Patricia was crying quietly across from me. She said she'd always wondered if Margaret was telling the truth. If something really was there. But it was easier to believe her sister had been ill. Easier to accept that explanation than to face the alternative. I went to my supervisor the next day. I tried to explain what was happening, tried to show her the incident reports, the pattern, Margaret's note. She listened with a practiced expression of concern that barely masked her skepticism. She suggested I take some time off. Said the night shift was clearly taking a toll on my mental health. She used the same words they'd probably used with Margaret. Stress, trauma, breakdown. I refused the leave. I couldn't abandon those babies. If I left, who would be there at 3:33? Who would touch them and bring them back? The thought of those shadows pressing down, stealing tiny breaths while everyone slept, while monitors screamed into empty hallways, it was unbearable. So I stayed. And every week, like clockwork, it happened again. 3:33 in the morning. The alarms. The shadows. The gasping returned to life. I developed a routine. I made sure I was always near room 7 as the time approached. I kept my hands ready. I learned to move faster, to reach all the babies within seconds. But I could feel something changing. The shadows were getting bolder. They didn't retreat as quickly when I entered. Sometimes they lingered, writhing in the corners like smoke that couldn't quite dissipate. And the babies, even after they started breathing again, they were different. More listless. Like something had been taken from them that wouldn't fully return. I started bringing things to work. Salt, which I'd read had protective properties. I lined the doorway of room 7 with it. Thin lines that I hoped the night cleaning crew wouldn't notice. I brought religious medals from different faiths. Small icons I tucked into the corners of the room. I even found a woman who claimed to be a medium. She came to the hospital under the pretense of visiting a sick relative, and I snuck her into room 7 during my break. She stood in the doorway for less than 10 seconds before her face went pale. She backed out, shaking her head, refusing to enter. In the hallway, she grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises and told me to request a transfer. She said the room was stained with old death, that something had marked it as a feeding ground, and that I couldn't fight it alone. She said I was only delaying the inevitable, and that eventually, the shadows would take someone even I couldn't bring back. I didn't transfer. I couldn't. These babies needed someone who knew. Someone who understood. Someone who would be there at 3:33. But it's getting harder. Last week, there were 5 babies in room 7. When the alarms went off and I ran in, the shadows were darker, thicker. They didn't retreat to the corners. They stayed, hovering, pressing down even as I touched each baby. I had to keep my hands on them longer. Had to push back against something I couldn't see but could definitely feel. It was like pressing against cold water, against something with substance and weight and intention. All 5 babies came back. But one of them, a little girl named Ava, she didn't cry after. She just stared at the ceiling with wide, dark eyes. Like she was seeing something the rest of us couldn't. Like she'd been somewhere and brought something back with her. The other nurses are starting to notice. They see how I hover near room 7 every night. They see how I'm always the first one through the door when the alarms go off. They're starting to whisper. Starting to look at me the way people probably looked at Margaret. I'm so tired. I haven't slept properly in weeks. Every time I close my eyes, I see those shadows. I feel them pressing down on my chest, stealing my breath the way they steal the baby's breath. I wake up gasping, convinced I'm suffocating. But I can't stop. Don't you understand? I can't stop. Because if I'm not there, if I'm not in that room at 3:33, those babies will die. Just like they died 15 years ago. Just like they'll keep dying until someone figures out how to close whatever doorway is open in room 7. I've started documenting everything. Writing it all down. Recording voice memos on my phone. I've made copies and stored them in different places. If something happens to me, if I end up like Margaret, I need people to know this is real. I need someone to believe. Last night was different. Last night, something changed. There were 3 babies in room 7. At 3:33, the alarms went off like always. I ran in like always. But this time, when I touched the first baby, when he gasped back to life, I felt something. A pulling sensation, like something was trying to take from me what I was giving to him. It was cold and hungry and vast, and for just a second, I couldn't breathe either. I pulled my hand back, gasping, and the baby started to fade again. I forced myself to touch him, to push through that horrible pulling sensation. He came back. They all came back. But I was weak. My legs almost gave out. I had to lean against the wall to stay upright. I think I understand now. I think Margaret understood too. The shadows don't just take. They need to feed. And someone has to pay the price. Margaret was paying it 15 years ago. She was giving something of herself every time she brought those babies back. And eventually, she had nothing left to give. I'm paying it now. With every baby I touch, with every breath I restore, I'm giving away something I can't get back. I can feel it. This hollowness inside me that's growing, spreading, like I'm being eaten from the inside out. I don't know how much longer I can do this. I don't know how much of me is left. But tonight, I'll be there. Tomorrow night too. Every night at 3:33, I'll be standing in room 7, ready to fight shadows that shouldn't exist for babies who deserve to live. Someone needs to figure this out. Someone needs to find a way to close that doorway, to stop whatever is feeding in room 7. Because I'm running out of time. I can feel it. The shadows know it too. They're waiting, watching, getting stronger while I get weaker. If you're listening to this, if you're hearing my story, please. If something happens to me, don't let them say I was crazy. Don't let them say it was stress or exhaustion or a breakdown. Margaret wasn't crazy. I'm not crazy. Room 7 at St. Catherine's Medical Center is cursed, haunted, marked by something that feeds on the breath of innocence. And it's almost 3:30 in the morning. I have to go now. The babies need me. They always need me at 3:33. I just hope I have enough left in me to bring them back one more time.